What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to TTP Sports. Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals was tonight, and this Boston Bruins just completely dominate the St. Louis Blues. They win by a score of 7-2 in Game 3 to take a 2-1 series lead going into Game 4. And I am going to be honest with you guys, this game was completely boring. There was just no excitement in this game at all. If you're a Boston fan, this was completely exciting for you because your team just dominated throughout the opposition throughout the entire game. So, yes, you had fun there, but just as a hockey fan in general, knowing my team didn't make the playoffs, so I'm watching the NHL playoffs just as a fan, as a spectator, for the love of the game. And what makes the NHL playoffs fun for me is a hard-fought battle between both teams till the very end. And this game wasn't it. This game was completely one-sided to Boston, and that just shows to go you how great of a team the Boston Bruins are. I'm not knocking St. Louis because they're also a great team, but they just didn't have it tonight. It was the same reason like in Game 1 after the first period. For Game 1, second, and third period, Boston completely dominated St. Louis throughout those two periods. It was surprising that Game 1 was as close as it was, but it shows in this game how much Boston dominated St. Louis, and the results show it. So Boston wins 7-2. Boston scores 4 times on the power play, and they also stop 4 out of 5 penalties. So that just also shows you how good of a special teams Boston has, because it's also shown throughout this entire playoffs. The special teams for Boston, that's the reason why they've been so dominant. And for St. Louis on their side, they got to stop giving up penalties because that's one of the main reasons on what's killing them. And they also got to get that power play going. Yeah, they scored once, but throughout that was their only goal this entire playoffs. I think it was like their first power play goal out of 9 power play chances, I think. And it just hasn't looked good for St. Louis at all on the power play. So Boston's just special teams, they're just flat out dominant, and it's one of the main reasons why they're so dominant. And it's showing in this game because they scored 4 times. So, summary of this game. Early on, St. Louis comes out hard. They come out fighting with the crowd energy because St. Louis, it's our first Stanley Cup final game back home in St. Louis since 1970. And you know the fans were dying for a Stanley Cup final to come back to St. Louis. So, the Blues come out hard. They come out checking. And from that hard play, they get an early power play. And they get 4 shots, but Tuukka Rask just stonewalls him a couple times. He looked really good on a power play. He just looked really good the entire game. But it felt like after that power play, St. Louis just died. They just lost any kind of energy that they had. I don't know how they lost it. I don't know how one power play can just drain all of your energy. But it just looked like that throughout the entire game. From after that power play, they just completely lost the energy that they had coming into this game. And then also, middle of this period, Boston get the power play. And like I said, they scored on it 4 times. So, Patrice Bergeron, he tips in a shot from Torrey Krug from the point to make it 1-0 Boston. And then, going near the end of this period, 3-on-2 for Boston. They get a nice little passing play going, and Charlie Coyle just buries a puck past Jordan Binnington to make it a 2-0 Boston lead. And then, the third goal happens, which is very questionable. So, at first, Sean Kuraly and the Bruins, Sean Kuraly ended the line. They make a really good play to steal the puck off of the Blues defenseman, and Kuraly just tosses it over to the net, and it goes right under Jordan Binnington. And before the challenge, because St. Louis does challenge this for offside, but before that, if the challenge didn't happen, this is a very weak goal given up by Jordan Binnington. There was like 10 seconds left in the period, and you allow a goal like that. He just literally flings the puck toward the net, and Binnington's so late to get down into the butterfly that the puck's in the net before he gets down. It's just, I don't know if Binnington didn't expect the shot or he didn't see it coming, but that's a stop that has to be saved. It has to be stopped, especially that late in the period. You cannot afford to give Boston any more momentum than they already have. And then, like I said, St. Louis does challenge this goal for offsides. And from the replays, it looked offside to me. Just like by this much, but to me, it was too close to tell. But even though it did look offside, because the Bruins player was just like a tiny bit over the blue line, like fully, and then the puck was just like a little bit just a little bit past the blue line. It wasn't fully across the blue line, which in the books, the puck has to be fully across the blue line in order to deem the play onside, and the player cannot beat the puck into the zone before it crosses the blue line. So it looked like the Boston player was on offside, but like I would have been fine with the call if they said the call and the play stands. It's a good goal. It just bugs me that they said the play was confirmed. It was onside. It's just like what in that what replay showed you that the play was onside, because it just completely looked like the play was closer to being offside than nothing. Like, I get it, there was lack of evidence to overturn the call, but it kind of looked like the evidence was there to possibly overturn that goal. But in the end, the call stands. It was a good goal. It was confirmed onside, which will be questioned throughout this entire series. That will be the question throughout the rest of the series, actually. So, Boston takes a 3-0 lead from there. And since St. Louis lost that challenge, they get a power play. I mean, the Boston gets the power play, St. Louis gets the penalty, because the NHL, in their smart decision making, you get a penalty after you lose an offside challenge. So, power play for Boston starting in the second period. Pastrnak scores on that power play, and then St. Louis Blues, they think they can get some momentum coming back into this game. They make it 4-1 off of an Ivan Barbashev goal right in front of Tuukka Rask. But then, almost a minute later, Torrey Krug on the power play again makes it 5-1 Boston, and he runs Jordan Binnington out of the net. It just wasn't the night for Jordan Binnington. He allows 5 goals on 19 shots. He only stopped 14 of them. He just didn't have it tonight. It was just, this Jordan Binnington, I don't want to say he hasn't looked bad. He hasn't looked sharp, but we all know Jordan Binnington is one of the main reasons that St. Louis is in the spot that they're in right now. He is probably the main reason that they're in the Stanley Cup Finals to begin with. So you already know Game 4, Jordan Binnington is going to come back into the net, and he's going to have a statement game right there. He needs to play off his head to get St. Louis back into the series. And just for the entire St. Louis team in general, because that has to be another statement game yet again, like Game 2 was. Game 4 has to be a statement game because you lost home ice advantage again. After you just won it back in Game 2, you lost it again. So, yeah, Game 4 has to be a statement game. And just after that Krug goal, St. Louis does get another goal on the power play, surprisingly, to make it 5-2. But then Achari for Boston and Johansson, they both, one makes it 6-2 and another makes it 7-2. So, just like I said, Boston just completely ran away with this game. It was not fun to watch. And just, yeah, that's it, because it just wasn't fun watching this game. It wasn't fun as a fan standpoint to watch just one team completely dominate throughout. There just wasn't any fight from St. Louis continuing on in this game. Yeah, they tried to spark some energy by trying to fight some of the Boston players, but the rest kept breaking it up. And Boston Bruins players, they did the right thing when St. Louis tried to start fights. They got out of it. They got out of the scrums. They just made sure that they didn't want to give any kind of momentum to St. Louis. So Boston did the smart thing. They just came out, they weathered the storm early in this game, and they just took it from there. And like I said earlier, Game 4 has to be a statement game for the St. Louis Blues, because you lost home ice advantage again, and you have to get that energy back from the home crowd, because I would assume every person in that crowd is probably pissed. So, St. Louis, you have to stand on your head. Jordan Binnington, you have to stand on your head and net. You have to have a major bounce-back game from this game, because you haven't looked sharp this entire series. So, I'm going to say St. Louis is just going to have to come out and play a much better game on Monday. And Boston, I would just like keep continuing to do what you're doing, because it's working. You're making the St. Louis Blues uncomfortable. You're just completely dominating them in every aspect of the game. And I'm not saying St. Louis is a bad team, because they showed it in Game 2 why they are in this position in general, because they are a really good team. It's just that in the first 2 games of the series, they got completely dominated by Boston. And I don't know if that's just from not coming out mentally ready, or is it lack of experience? Because it's probably lack of experience is probably factoring into this. So yeah, just game four, you got to come out and make another statement to get back into the series because Boston has a 2-1 series lead going into Monday's game four, and if Boston wins game four, I just say Boston wins the series flat out. So, what are you guys' thoughts and opinions on this game? What are you guys' thoughts and opinions on the rest of the series going forward? So don't forget to leave a comment. Don't forget to drop a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, boys. And I'll see you in the next one. Oh yeah, before I log off, I'm gonna say go on to my buddy's channel, Sports Talk with Broads. Me and him did a podcast on the recent NBA Finals Game 1 between the Warriors and the Raptors. We had a very nice conversation throughout, so I recommend go and watch that video right now or whenever you get a chance. So, yes, so next time, boys, I will see you in the next one.